Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a space where we can be, belong, and become the very best version of ourselves. So, wherever you're joining us, again, Colorado, Florida, Michigan, California, Idaho, Washington, we have so many different people all interacting with these studies. So, again, we just want to say thank you for joining us today. What I think makes Ethos special is we continue to ask deeper questions of a text, right? We don't just kind of take a surface approach and then try to find an application for today, right? We delve in. We ask, what is the cultural context? What was the author's meaning? And again, it takes time, right? Resources to do this, but we think it's worth it. Because I think only then, when you really dive in deep, can you really make a really interesting, I would call meaty application, right? An application that has heart, soul, breath. Only when you do the real deep study can that emerge. And so we continue doing that really in-depth study here at Ethos. And so we would ask, consider sharing these videos. Every chance you get on YouTube, we want to grow this channel together. So share these videos. If you found something interesting here that you thought, oh, I want to share that idea, share the idea. Right? Let's grow these ideas that we need to delve deep into this beautiful compilation of writings, poetry, prophetic warnings. We call this the Bible, right? We think this is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful gift to the world. And so, as always, we delve in, right? We're delving into the book of Genesis. And so we remind everyone from the get-go, because sometimes people join right in the middle of this series, right? So we just want to remind you again, this book is not a history book. The book of Genesis was never intended to be a literal, perfect, historically accurate, dates perfectly set. That it was not a history book, right? That was never the intent. And so what the intention was that during that time, 587, some will say 586, depending on the person, but Babylonian captivity happens, right? They go under Babylonian captivity. Babylon, this huge empire, takes them, much like they did with the Assyrians, right? The Assyrians did the same thing. Their temples destroyed, their people marched hundreds of miles on foot, and they basically find themselves amongst all these other tribes of people who have all assimilated, all taken on Babylonian gods. And Israel, though, again, why Israel and in the Bible, Torah, continues to stand the test of time is, in my opinion, because they chose to stand strong in their values, in their culture. They wanted Israel to survive, right? They wanted their stories to preserve. And so Torah is not a written response to, we got to keep our history, right? We got to keep all of our dates perfect. No, it was a written response to the fear of assimilation, right? We will not take on your gods. And so to remind ourselves who our God is, to remind ourselves about our rituals, our values, our people, we write the oral tradition down and we keep that close. And so every time Torah is brought out and the rabbi opens up Torah, it is a special moment for the Jews, right? This is the Jews saying, we are opening up not just a sacred piece, right? We're not just opening up a book. For Jewish people, when the rabbi would sit on the stool, right? Much like I'm doing now, I'm sitting on the stool sharing ideas. When they would expand on Torah, everyone got silent. Everyone leaned in because this was a special moment. Because you were not just about to read a book, you were about to share elements of your culture. You were about to share what makes you you, what makes you human, reminding you of the rich tradition that you followed. That's what happened. It wasn't this sermon where this pastor is walking on the stage, there's lights and smokes, and that works for some people, right? But back then, it was never about entertainment. It was always about, let me show you what it looks like to be connected to the divine, what it looks like to be more human, right? That was the idea of Torah. We're holding on to the traditions, the poetics, the mythology, the prophetic musings, the warnings from their kings. This was Torah. And so when we delve into Genesis, we are delving into a piece of Torah. And so Torah, we remind people, it's a complete narrative of Israel miniaturized, right? So every time they read a story, again, if it's Jonah, if it's Noah, if it's Abraham, whoever the story is about, they see themselves in the story, right? They know this is Israel. And this is why, again, you'll see Moses wander the desert 40 days, and why you'll see Jesus later on wander the desert, 40 years, while Jesus will wander 40 days. Over and over again, they put themselves in the story. They see themselves in the person, the messianic archetype. They see themselves in the story. So, Abraham, right? We've been talking about Abraham. We're in chapter 18. Abraham literally means the father, the founder of Israel, right? That's the founder. That's what they would say instead of Abraham. Founder, right? The founder, the one who helped us step away from tradition into something new, right? Helped us birth something new. Yeah, that's what Abraham's purpose was. That's what founder means, the birthing of something new. And so for Israel over and over again, this idea of a new birth, oh, it's so rich. It's over and over again in their story. To be an Israelite means you experience new birth, which means there is a death to certain things before the new birth happens. And so before I get ahead of myself, let me continue. We are on chapter 18, and we're going to move through 1 through 19. We're going to take a good chunk today, but we're going to do it. So let's delve in right now. Let me read it to you first. Now, the Lord appeared to him in the plains of Mamre, and he was sitting at the entrance of the tent when the day was hot. Many of you have heard this story before, right? We've heard the story, but I'm going to open it up a little bit bigger for you today. And he lifted his eyes and saw, and behold, 3 men were standing beside him. And he saw, and he ran toward them from the entrance of the tent, and he prostrated himself to the ground. And he said, My lords, if only I have favor in your eyes, please do not pass on from beside your servant. Please let a little water be taken, and bathe your feet, and recline under the tree. And I will take a morsel of bread and sustain your hearts. Afterwards you shall pass on, because you have passed by your servants. And they said, So shall you do as you have spoken. And Abraham hastened to the tent to Sarah, and he said, why can't I speak today? Set the meal for these men, fine flour, knead, and more cakes. And to the cattle did Abraham run, and he took a calf, tender and good, and he gave it to the youth, and hastened to prepare it. And he took cream and milk and the calf that he had prepared, and he placed them before them. And he was standing over them under the tree, and they ate. And he said to them, Where is Sarah? And they said to him, Where is Sarah, your wife? And he said, Behold, in the tent. And he said, I will surely return to you at this time next year. And behold, your wife Sarah, here comes the big part, your wife Sarah will have a son. And Sarah heard from the entrance of the tent, and it was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, coming on in years. Sarah had ceased to have the way of the women. And Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I become worn out, will I have smooth flesh? And also my master is old. And the Lord said to Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh? Saying, It is really true that I will give birth, although I am old? Is anything hidden from the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you, and at this time next year, and Sarah will have a son. And Sarah denied, saying, I didn't laugh, because she was afraid. And truth be told, she laughed inside, right? And he said, No, but you laughed. So we'll stop there today. We'll stop at 15. So let me just delve into some of this. This story seems a little weird, doesn't it? A lot of questions. Does Abraham immediately think they're angels? We have all these pictures of Abraham prostrate in front of angels, right? Is that the idea here? Did he know these were angels? That this was literally God in front of him? Does God come down and walk and like pretend to be a man? All of these things come up. Jewish tradition says we can never be in front of God, or we would like burn, right? So what's going on here, right? Is this story to be taken literally, metaphorically? What do we do? Well, let's just delve right into the first verse. Let's do it. It says, Now the Lord appeared to him in the plains of Mamre, and he was sitting at the entrance of the tent when the day was hot. So, Abraham, keep in mind, we just talked about this last week. He was circumcised 3 days earlier. That's important. 3 days earlier. So he basically proclaimed this promise to the whole, his whole community. And truth be told, they were circumcised too. Again, this is not an easy thing to do as an older man, right? Being circumcised. Ouch, right? But he's saying to the whole community, we are going to, as Israelites, choose the path toward life. We are choosing the thing that brings life. That's what he's doing. And notice this, he's at the tent. Middle Eastern time, this is what they would do on hot days. You were literally like just boiling. You'd try to stay in the tent. You try to find some kind of shade. This is happening in a literal sense, right? But all of this takes place after the 3 days. Notice this, God shows up, right? Abraham goes out of his way to say, I will accept the promise. I will hold true to the promise. I will build resiliency, right? I will stand firm. I will believe, right? I will trust this idea here. Because of this, it says the divine shows up. So important. This is such a huge pinnacle moment. Again, not just for the character of Abraham, but for Israel, right? This is metaphorical as well. Abraham, imagine this. You just got circumcised at a very old age, right? So literal sense here, he's 3 days in so much pain. Will this ever pass? That's what some of us would be saying, right? I cannot believe this. The pain, right? The pain. I was just circumcised. The pain. This is what's going on. But here's the beauty. After 3 days, God's going to show up. After 3 days, healing will happen. After 3 days, growth will take place. New life will begin, right? Abraham has been in pain, but God shows up and reminds him there's new life. It's such a beautiful, beautiful story for Israel. 3 days. Hold firm, right? Don't give up. Life is just around the corner. And it reminds me, every athlete, right? Every business leader, successful business leader, anyone attempting to do anything difficult in our culture, they have gone through difficult times, haven't they? Yeah. Any of those people, if you ask them about their stories, they would tell you it wasn't easy, right? They would tell you there were moments where they wanted to give up. There were moments where they thought the whole thing is just going down the crapper quick, right? The whole thing's falling apart. They would talk to you about their 3 days experience. But then they'd also tell you about the after, right? Because in the after is where we often see God show up, right? After the pain, after the brokenness, after the hardship, after the whole thing went belly up. After moving through the difficult times, not giving up, that's when life really happens. That's what we call victory, success, growth. This is what happens when we push through the difficult times. Abraham, 3 days, he made it. He succeeded. He pushed through. And so think about Israel for a moment again. The whole thing is Israel miniaturized, right? So for Israel, who's in the middle of captivity, right? The question is, will we make it? Will we sustain? Are our people toast? Are they gone? Is this the end of Israel? The answer is no. If you hold firm, don't give up. 3 days is always this metaphorical idea that we'll get through it. Think about the word here, Mamre, right? He was in Mamre. The word means something really interesting. It means strength, resiliency. Right? So he's in this place. So again, so cool when you look at the original language. He is in the place of building strength and resiliency. Abraham is choosing to sit in a place of resiliency. He's building his strength. I love this idea. In the middle of your brokenness, in the middle of your pain, Israel, in the middle of Babylonian captivity, don't just sit and cry out. Choose to build your resiliency. Choose to build your character, build your nation, build your people up through here first, right? inside here. And when you are freed 60, 70 years later, your people will come out bigger, better, thriving, ready for new life. It's such a beautiful message. Yeah. Let me keep going. And he lifted his eyes and saw, and behold, 3 men were standing beside him. And he saw, and he ran toward them from the entrance of the tent, and he prostrated himself to the ground. And he said, My lords, if only I have found favor in your eyes, please do not pass on from beside your servant. Now, again, many people assume this is like he's seen angels or this kind of thing. You would be missing the point entirely. Right? You'd be missing the point because Middle Eastern culture, how you treat a guest, how you treat the person walking through your community, how you treat the foreigner, right? The stranger at your gates. This is so important. It says more about you than about them. And so you were expected to treat guests as if they were gods. Because truth is, so much of the folklore of that time era, you could read Babylonian, Assyrian, Egyptian, Roman, Greek, right? Persian. They have all these folklore stories about what happens when you don't treat the guest well. And so they have so much of these stories that all revolve around a god disguising themselves as a man, coming to the tent. And the character sometimes treats them well, but if they don't treat them well, you have all these stories where the person's cursed. Right? And you're going to see this later on a lot. But in this moment, Abraham does what is culturally considered culturally good. He treats the guest really well. And the truth of the story is these guests were not just men, were they? Yeah. And so, again, the idea here, he doesn't just lay prostrate because he's worshiping, right? In this time era, when someone comes to your tent, when someone passes through your town, you were expected, you were washing their feet. You were showing absolute hospitality to them, washing their feet, giving them food, giving them water, letting them sit in the shade of your tent. These were all things that you would do to show connection and favor to the guest. Now, notice this. So Abraham, he kills the fatted calf. He does all these things. That, for an Israelite who's reading this, they would say, whoa, Abraham has gone above and beyond, because you would do that if you were having a big party. Yeah, so think about what their message is to Israel, right? The guest, the person outside of your door, we must treat them with absolute love, absolute connection. We must bring them in. It's a beautiful idea. And so we'll continue. Please let a little water be taken and bathe your feet, recline under the tree. And I will take a morsel of bread and sustain your hearts. Afterwards you shall pass on, because you have passed by your servant. And they said, so shall you do as you have spoken. So again, Abraham gives everything he has. I was thinking about this, right? What if church communities, what if neighborhoods, what if this is how we treated people? What if the new guy at work was treated like this? What if we treated people who are new to community this way? All right, think about that. Churches would be overflowing. There wouldn't be enough room, right? Neighborhoods would be constantly having block parties. You'd be constantly celebrating. You would know people in a deeper sense when we celebrate the stranger within our gates. This is what it meant to be an Israelite. You were connected to community. I mean, think about this. When is like the last time you had someone over for dinner? Like, think about that one. When's the last time you brought someone in to close proximity to you? I would argue we are so self-absorbed in our own lives right now, our own stuff. We've got so much going on that I think sometimes we forget that there are people out there that are dying to have connection with. And truth be told, our hearts, our souls, I think, are dying for that same connection. And when we push that off, when we stay connected to our screens instead of people, if we do this, we miss out on a really beautiful gift. And so watch as the story continues, right? There's a beautiful gift that's going to be given because Abraham and his family go out of their way to bring the stranger in, to show love, connection, favor. They go well out of their way. So notice this. And Abraham hastened to the tent of Sarah, and he said, hasten 3 say of meal and fine flour, knead, and make cakes. And to the cattle did Abraham run, and he took a calf, tender and good, and he gave it to the youth, and he hastened to prepare it. And he took cream and milk and the calf. No, again, all of this is really expensive. If you were to do this, this would be like having 3 guests over and making them a huge Thanksgiving meal, enough for the whole block. Yeah, this is like prodigal son, father kind of banquet that's being prepared here. It's huge. It's over the top, right? This is why, again, maybe not everything in this story is literal, because this is hugely over the top, right? So big, so grand. But the message is, of course, the message, right? The message is we love each other. We bring people into community. We go over and above for people. We bring people into community. That's the idea. So he invites his family. They're all involved. He brings into his home all these people. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. And they said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" And he said, "Behold, in the tent." And he said, "I will surely return to you at this time next year. And behold, your wife Sarah," here comes the crazy, the moment. "Your wife Sarah, in 1 year, will have a son." And Sarah heard from the entrance of the tent, and it was behind him. So again, Sarah hears this, right? They're both old. They're both old, well beyond their time to be having kids. And they hear this, right? You're going to have a son. This is the gift that's given. I want you to read something. Again, one of my favorite commentators says this. In ancient Middle Eastern culture, the guest, the traveler, was brought inside the home, treated with dignity and respect. The guests would often share stories of foreign worlds, gifts from afar, and before leaving, they would offer a blessing. The blessing was the cornerstone of the Abrahamic narrative. I love this idea here. The blessing was one for all Hebrews, right? It's not just the story of Abraham. This is the story of Israel. Again, it's the promise that there's going to be freedom from your oppressors. New life again. New life is going to break forth. There's the promise when you live this way, right? When you take care of each other, and when you even take care of your enemies, when you love people this way, new life breaks forth. And there's a promise, there's a gift that always comes with it. Not that you do the thing for the gift, but the gift always naturally happens. It just does. Good things happen. Call it karma, call it goodwill, call it God putting blessings on, whatever you want to call it. It happens. We know this from experience, don't we? Now, Abraham and Sarah were old, coming up in years. Sarah had ceased to have any the way of the women. Now, again, this is her menstrual period, right? This is what they're talking about. She has not had this in a very long time. So how would one have a child? Well, the idea here is it's a miraculous birth. You will see in Jewish tradition, the miraculous birth is one we find over and over again in the stories, right? The miraculous birth, the thing, the promise. It can't just be a birth, it's got to be a miraculous one. There's got to be something associated where we can say it was the divine, right? And this is how the story goes. And Sarah laughed within herself, saying, "After I become worn out, will I have smooth flesh?" Right? Am I Benjamin buttoning this story? Am I going to get younger as I get older? This is her comment here. And also the master's old. Abraham's old, right? I don't know that we could do this. And so the promise is given. Why doubt it? Why do we immediately go to doubt? I thought about this for a while for myself. I think oftentimes we doubt what our hearts are desiring to be true so often because of a couple things. I think we doubt sometimes because we're not sure it's going to happen. Maybe it's a safety mechanism, right? If I doubt it, then maybe when it doesn't happen, I won't have my hopes up. If I doubt it, then there's a safety element that I don't have to feel bad, right? Doubt, I would argue, is almost a slap in the face to the promise. Look at this quote. Doubt only emerges because we live in a world where we compare our progress against the progress of others. Whenever we doubt ourselves, what we are actually questioning is our ability to meet the expectations of what we think is possible. I love this. I wish Israel could have read this quote, right? Doubt. Doubt is often there because we're comparing, like, well, they did it. I don't think I could do it. We're constantly falling into this place of doubt because fear begins to set in, doesn't it? Yeah, we begin to doubt the promise. And so Sarah, she doubts that God's going to provide. She doubts that the thing could happen. And this is something, again, Israel in the middle of captivity. There are many who are beginning to doubt that it's ever going to change. There's some who are doubting that they'll ever get out of Babylon. And so the reminder here is don't give up. It's so easy to doubt, but don't give up. Hold fast to the promise. I get it. Doubt's easy, but don't give up, right? Don't give up. We'll finish off here. And the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh, saying, 'It is really true that I will give birth, although I am old?'" Right? So again, I find this kind of fun too, right? There's this miraculous moment. She didn't laugh out loud. She laughed to herself, right? And yet God hears it. And he says, "Hey, why'd she laugh? Is anything hidden from the Lord? And at the appointed time, I will return to you. At this time next year, Sarah will have a son." And Sarah denied, saying, "I did not laugh," right? Because, she didn't laugh out loud. She's not lying. Because she was afraid. And he said, "No, but you laughed," right? You doubted the promise. You were scared. When we choose to believe the promise, though, believe that life is going to return, things shift, right? Things can shift. Things can open up. New life can begin. Life has a way of turning around when we choose to believe it will. When we soak ourselves in doubt, when we jump down that road, unfortunately, we miss possibilities, don't we? We get so saturated. A friend of mine, he told me about this experience. He tried opening a sandwich shop in Tennessee. And truth be told, he got into a lot of really difficult moments with it. Didn't know how to quite do the marketing right. Even to the point of like knowing how much to order, where to order, all those kind of things. And unfortunately, it failed. It didn't do well. And so he said he sat there for quite a while. I was trying to figure out, what do I do here? Do I just give up on this dream? Because he had all these great ideas of like connecting with community, giving kids from impoverished families, giving them free meals periodically, doing barbecues for the community, all this great stuff. And he failed. And the business looked like it was about to go under. And so what my friend did is he said, I could give up. I could cash in my chips. I could file for bankruptcy here. I could do all of that. Or I could believe that this idea is worth chasing. I could believe that this thing has life. I could believe that if I push through a little harder, if I look and figure out what worked, what didn't work, if I give it another shot, I think it's going to turn around. And so my friend didn't give up. He pushed through. He has one of the most thriving businesses there in his tiny little town. It's doing really well now. He did not give up. He said, I choose to build resilience. I choose to trust the dream I have of something bigger. And I love these stories because these stories are the stories. They're the ones that we find have more and more life. The people who trusted the promise, trusted the dream, trusted their intuition, right? That there's new life just waiting outside of this difficult moment. Those are the stories, right? Those are the stories with texture, meaning, the meaty stories. It concludes with this. And the men arose from there, and they looked upon Sodom. And Abraham went with them to escort them. And the Lord said, shall I conceal from Abraham what I am doing? And Abraham will become a great and powerful nation, and all the nations of the world will be blessed for him. For I have known him because he commands his sons and his household after him, that they should keep the way of the Lord to perform righteousness and justice. We'll delve into this more next week. But in order that the Lord bring upon Abraham that which he spoke concerning him. Notice this. I love this idea. In the middle of your hardship, in the middle of what seems like absolute failure, there is a deeper story going on in the background, isn't there? There's a deeper narrative going on, and it's your narrative. It's your heroic journey. Um, there always is one, right? The promise of new life around the corner, it's right there. And sometimes I get it, it's really hard to see, right? But trust the promise, trust the journey, trust Yahweh, right? Trust that this deeper story, you are a part of it, and things will shift. Don't give up. Hold on. And Abraham's promise right here, the reminder here at the end, I think it's so beautiful. There's a deeper story. I've had Abraham in my thoughts this whole time. I've been watching the whole thing. And Abraham doesn't know it yet, but his journey is really just beginning. Powerful things are about to happen for Abraham. Isn't that a cool idea? In the middle of your pain, in the middle of your brokenness, in the middle of what seems like a defeat, isn't it a cool image that the divine is standing there saying, they don't know it yet, but their story is about to flip. Their story is about to get really, really good. I can't wait for you to watch. Watch as I turn the next page. Things are about to get really, really good for them. Isn't this a beautiful chapter? So what do we do? How do we take it home? Here's a couple ideas I thought of while I was kind of moving through this for myself. What do we do when we're tempted to give up? Because I think many times that's what we run into, right? Difficult moments. Sometimes we have to take a break, come back to the thing, learn from the thing. But what do we do? How do we not give up? So number one, remember why you started it and how much you really wanted it. I think this is a cool idea. And for me, I'm going to begin podcasting again. I've taken a break a little bit and I've had to like reevaluate what's important, what's not, what messages do I want to share? How do I bring more positivity to the action of deconstruction? Right? Because often it's a negative thing. So I've been reevaluating, writing new podcasts, building the thing up into something more positive for me. And so I've had to do that. I don't want to give up. And so for me personally, I had to stop and remember, why did I do the thing in the first place? And so think back on that moment with that project, the thing, the goal, the concept, that you had conceived. Remember the joy of it. Remember the thrill, the adventure of it. I think when we do that, often that kind of puts us back on track. And it's harder to let go of goals. Number two, look into the reason why you gave up, right? Sometimes we're just burnt out. Other times we had some difficult stuff come up and it kind of beat us down, right? Look over those things. There are many reasons why people will want to quit. And so be diligent, figure out what those things were. See if you can process through those things. I've been doing that a lot lately too, moving through what do I do differently? How do I make that thing more palatable? Number three, picture in your mind the ultimate result. I think this is exciting. Dream again, right? What could this thing be? Right? A visualization, when you visualize a thing, it often is accompanied by action. And so visualize it, that feeling of like, this is what the thing looks like. I can't wait to dive back in. That is exciting, especially to someone who loves creating things, right? Number four, make a plan. After you've visualized it, after you've seen what it could be again, after you've moved through the difficult moments of like, it was painful, it was difficult, whatever, you can write a list, right? Make a breakout chart, form a checklist of tasks, create a plan, right? Make a plan so that you can get right back into the thing. Don't give up. And then lastly, find support from others. I find this is so important. And I'll use my example again of podcasting. I've had so many people reach out and say, we just miss it. We miss it so much. Write another one. And so I'll reach out to these people, talk with them, find different words of encouragement from people, connect with people. People will support you. And so ask for it, seek it. People want to help. And so make sure you don't just sit there all alone in the middle of all of this. Allow other people to be a part of it. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this. I love what we're doing here with Ethos, especially in regard to this Genesis study. So much fun. As we do this, as we take hours and hours preparing, researching, taking time to put all this together, I would ask that you consider financially supporting what we do. Go to ethos-church.org/donate. There you can give tax-deductible donations that help us continue this really important ministry. Ethos living rooms, if you want to be a part of an online community, we're going to begin building that back up again, connecting with different people. I'm trying to build that bigger and bigger and bigger so that we have even the ideas of like having other people begin to share other lessons. It'd be so much fun. So consider doing that with us and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button, share this with people. Folks, we love you. Thank you for joining us today. And next week, we'll finish off chapter 18. Talk to you later. See ya.